My name is Nik. I guess I'm the chameleon of the week. Why am I saying that? Together with Julia out there, we are trying to keep this event, this whole week event, in good order. Monday, I was assisting Henk van Laar of that day called Daisy. We discussed about greening of the fleet. Yesterday, I was Henk van Laar about automation and cluster and so on, but we will discuss about this a bit later. And now, as you say, I'm dressed as a rapporteur. But before I start telling that story, I want to support Elvina a bit. Alice is not a project, it's an association and it's a belief. And the belief is about the physical internet. And I think next to him or behind Elvina there's Piet. He's also a believer of the physical internet, unless he lost his belief meanwhile, which is kind of... Okay. But the physical internet, or Alice, is the only association that I know of which looks at digitalization, decarbonization from a supply chain perspective, and not transport mode by transport mode. And that's why since 2014, I'm trying to be as active as a member as possible in Alice. So that's the more complete story. Go and have a look. Go and have a look at the website and join. Now, Nik Delmeire as rapporteur. But it's not Nik Delmeire as rapporteur, because we do that, try to do that as a team. I see Cass here in the audience and yourself. We're trying to do this together, and there's a certain Mario in the somewhere digitally present who also helps us out with this. And it's a bit of a strange guy, this Mario Sattler. He asked me to become rapporteur, and then he escaped from Brussels back to Austria, leaving me with the problem, or with the challenge. Now, how did I approach it? I'm not Nik Delmeire now as a coordinator of the platform and being the rapporteur. I try to behave as Nik Delmeire, who has a small business with some vessels and tries to transport goods across European canals and rivers. I used to be involved in supply chain and manufacturing, and I invested in a few bitcoins, and guess what? I became rich, and what to do with the money? I bought some vessels, and I tried to make this a hobby and try to earn a bit of money. I have a mission and a vision, but the mission and a vision has nothing to do with digitalization. It's about my core business, which is transporting goods, offering door-to-door solutions as part of integrated supply chains, and I will try to do this with green vessels. Unaffordable, but thanks to winning on the Bitcoin market, I can afford to pay those vessels. That's a bit the way I approach this. So I take care of my business. I want to invest in IWT. Why? Because I want to invest in IT, not in IWT. Why? Because it helps me to integrate in the supply chains. It helps me to build door-to-door solutions. It helps me to keep my costs down. And maybe if you think about autonomous sailing, it helps me to reduce the cost of labor, or to help people develop other skills so that they have more interesting jobs. And it helps me to, in an easy way, to comply with all what is necessary in inland navigation. That's my point of view. I have a few people in the house who follow all what's happening with respect to IT, let's say in a European context. So they follow what Sim and his people are cooking, or not cooking, or serving. I try to follow what the possibilities are in CINEA with all the different projects funding that are possible. And these people also try to follow what's going on in commercial solutions in terms of IT. So that's Nik Delmeire as a company. And I happen to be a bit active in an association as well. And then this rapporteur thing fell on my desk. And I tried to bring the presentation as a combination of rapporteur and Nik, the businessman. So making digital by default a reality. Let's go from a...
Talking to the microphone.
Oh yeah, I'm used to walk around. Yeah, right. But I'm not big enough, not tall enough. So making digital by default a reality, an industry's perspective. So as I said, it's from a business perspective. Please note, missions, visions are at the level of the core business of the industry and never at IT level. That's not their concern. They want to make use of IT to the best, in the best possible way, and all the rest is kind of wasted time, so to speak. So from a business perspective, and even more from a supply chain perspective, from an operational perspective, because that's what I do, that's where I have to make a living from. That's me, thanks. And what I already said, as a businessman, from industry perspective, it happens to be in line with what is famous and wonderful TNO report, Pantea report. I don't know who else was working on it. They called the DINA report, TNO report, and it repeats a bit what I already said. So effective and efficient integration in supply chain logistics processes, efficient navigation and traffic management, it's RIS, autonomous sailing, what have you, and administration should run easily for complying with legislation. And then, for example, we welcome very much the FT initiative. And we have to take into account, of course, that all has to be done in maximum safety and security. To use your words of a few minutes ago or half an hour ago, we should be in the Champions League, but all this digitalization should not allow us to watch more Champions League football while sailing and with the risk of having accidents. Of course, all this with the aim to participate, contribute to the Green Deal, modal shift, and what have you, and addressing the, as Mr. Hololei said already, addressing the challenges regarding staffing. But leading all this, I can't repeat it enough, is the company's mission and vision with this door-to-door solutions and so on. So that was the to be. Of course, we have to start from the as is, finding out where we are now and how to try to do this, would like to do this by engage all relevant stakeholders, of which the businesses are indeed the key ones. But we have to do this also while creating a sense of urgency. We need to make progress. We can't keep on discussing about the vision and the mission. We really have to do things. We have to analyze current systems and operations to understand it, otherwise we don't know what has to come next. And we have to kind of define the starting point, a reference point, and I think the TNO report, DINA report of a few years back is an excellent one. I think Martin and his team will come back to this also a bit later. So the next slides try to picture a bit what the elements are of IS, and they need to be further investigated as categorized as we have to maintain it, since it's nice to have, it's a must-have, it's already there, so you can think of any category you like, but we have to, this exercise would need to be done. And in order to help us with that, I have to thank Henk van Laar. He brought us the image of a temple. And the other tool we like to use is, for those who know the Platina 3 document on digitalization, there's a nice table in it on what needs to be done, and it's been categorized according to the different topics in the Platina 3 projects: market, fleet, infrastructure, and jobs. So the two together would help us, hopefully help us, to implement what needs to be implemented as soon as possible. For a moment, I forget Cas Willems' Road to the Sun, but this will come back later. So here's the famous temple. First thing I told when to Henk once he published this, I said, "Have you forgot the Greek goddesses? Normally you show these temples also with the Greek goddesses of those times." So here's the image of the temple. So the top or the roof is digital by default, all prepared, and people are skilled to do this. The pillars are the different, what we call building blocks. These are the things I would need as a businessman every day to run my commercial things, to do the operations. So these things are, the Google Maps of the IWT world. That's all foreseen in the pillars. And there we, as a start, we kept, or we maintained 5 pillars are strong enough, are sufficient to hold the roof. That's a bit the idea. And then we have the foundations, which are things we are not alone with. So it's more than IWT. IWT needs those things. Make sure that the foundations are aligned with IWT needs, but we are not alone to work on that, to invest on that, to make use of that. There is the data sharing, data quality, data sovereignty. There is standards. There is digital, mobile connectivity, including cybersecurity, and that are all kinds of things related to human resources, training, and education. Data sharing, always, it's a hype, data sharing. Everybody speaks about data sharing, but it's kind of an illusion. It's data selling and data buying. That's already very clear to me. It's not just about sharing. It's you have to sell data, you have to buy data. Data is the raw material of this world. So it's you buy raw material, you add value, you sell it again as a semi-finished product, and so on. That's data sharing. So this is the temple. That's not enough. Then you have to, for those who are a bit familiar with manufacturing, if you want to build a product, be it a house, be it a service, you need to have a bill of material. So all the components you need to get somewhere, you have to bring up, you have to define. If you don't do that, you get nowhere. So, and that's a bit the table here. It's not presented as a bill of material, but basically that's it. Here what we try to do, as a first attempt, is list the different pillars. I just used an example here. I did not develop the whole thing, just as a test case to see if you like it, you don't like it. So you have the pillars, the different pillars, digital, mobile connectivity, including cybersecurity. You have standardization, you have smart vessels, what have you. I think I'm wrong, it should be the foundation there, but anyway, then you have the different building blocks. Were they already listed in the DINA document of 2017? Are there any recent initiatives regarding these different topics? Building blocks is already launched by or supported by the EU. And if it would mention here smart vessels, autonomous vessels, then there would be a list of already 5 running projects today. Is it business to business? Is this business to authorities? Is this authority to authority? Because there it says to me, do me as a business have to invest a lot or not? Can I leave it to other parties? What's the available TRL level? Is it must have, nice to have, never have? You could also scale it a bit and so on. What is the action needed in terms of R&D, deployment, communication, or don't we have to do nothing at all because it's just there, it's off the shelf, you just buy it and you implement it. That's a bit the idea behind that, the bill of material. What I didn't bring up, but if you, I go on a bit with examples, but I can skip this. This, if you would go through to the Platina document, the same table, or this is the table which you can find in the Platina deliverable, which we took and developed a bit, rearranged a bit. So we have a foundation, we have pillars, we have the bill of material. So then we need to source these things in order to have them available. And there are many sources you can check where you can find these things more or less developed or what have you. So where are we in this world of potential sources? Of course, RIS, River Information Systems Services, are already brought up. It's, to me, the digital backbone if it's of inland navigation. If it isn't, to me, I think it should become the backbone. But we have work to do. As you mentioned, Sim, it's not yet. We are not there yet, and I say we have work to do. So you have to do their part in making sure it gets implemented, and we have to make sure, as an industry, we support you in doing this. And as we both experienced in January, it was not really successful. It's painful to admit, but it seemed like the industry was not yet interested enough in further developing RIS. So a lot of work to do there, and if this fails, we have a problem with all the rest. So RIS is part of DINA. You know DINA, you have the DINA report of a few years back. We have DTLF, for those who Digital Transport and Logistics Forum, which is the father or the mother of the FT regulation. The DTLF was supposed to have 2 children. One is FT and it's growing. And the other one is called Corridor Information Systems. This was the plug and play and federated and how to connect all the different platforms. But this, and hopefully Jeff later on can explain a bit more, it kind of came to a standstill. I don't know what's happening with this. It's probably taken over by some projects called like Federated and Phoenix, which will have the floor this afternoon. So we have DTLF, then we have European data spaces, which is different than European space data. Data spaces is overarching, would be across all of the transport modes, so we need to be involved, but we should not take leadership in that. Then you have all kinds of initiatives that relate to business to administration. Legislative tools, maybe combined directive would be one, what have you, I don't know, would take us too far. Then you have to B2B kind of things that already exist and that are probably like a million commercial initiative already out there in the market. To be followed, to be certified or not, I don't know, but it's something which will help us. So we are very much encapsulated already in the whole world of supply chain, so we can surf on a lot of things, but we should not lose our identity. A bit from another perspective, DINA, so again there is DIWA, which builds on RIS, hopefully. I think it does, it will, cannot be different. So there will be an important source for us as an industry to work with. RISCOMEX 1 and RISCOMEX 2. RISCOMEX 1 with EURIS and CERIS portals, which we have to make, which we have to sell a bit better still to the market, I would say. And hopefully there will be a RISCOMEX 2, which will build on RISCOMEX 1, as far as I understood. Pete, am I right? And this will become digital backbone. Yeah, I'll keep you awake, Pete. So this will add to the digital backbone of RIS, that's for sure. DTLF again, the Platinas, is not that's not the choir somebody was mentioning before, but these are 3 projects. Then we have the Federated and the Phoenix projects will take the stage, so I will not build on that one. But then you have a million like other projects, and I think the people that were in the room yesterday, each of these projects, Renew, Crystal Ploto, IWNet, Novimove, and then the predecessors of Federated and Phoenix, Planet and Neolix, they all contains elements of digitalization that may or not may be useful for IWT's further digitalization. Then ERP, TMS, ERP stands for Economic Resource Planning, Transport Management System, Warehouse Management Systems. All these are definitely taken into account as well, because these things are used by the big cargo owners, are used by the logistic service providers. And I don't know if Paul Ivanov is online. He's an innovative sailor. He has a few companies, and all his operations are to the degree of ETA and so on. He uses these kind of SAPs or Oracle tools to do what he has to do. Quite straightforward, quite simple. Then we have things that are already in place, BICS, UIB. Then we have Interreg and national projects or problems. We have, again, EU data spaces and EU space data. And if this goes on, I need to have a space cake to survive this whole week. Then, as Henk already said, we have to make sure that digital is a blessing and not a curse. If we do it wrongly, it's money being thrown away. That's part of his presentation. If you ever get a chance to see Ton Mol present this presentation, it's just perfect. It's just perfect. It's spot on. So that's all the same all again for those who already forgot. So all of these sources will need to be linked to the temple, to the table, to the bill of material, and of course in the end to all the different operational processes. And that we will use once this is done. This will lead to proposals for actions and measures, hopefully, which then will be taken up by Sim and his team and will be translated into a tender or whatever you like to call it. So here, what are different processes? I won't go through it. It's processes. Process is the goods flow, the compliance. I won't go into detail. Otherwise, you also get a headache. So it needs to be detailed out. This is very roughly, but all what's needed is there. So what do we need for that? A lot of money. And the bitcoins are not as successful anymore, so we have a bit of a problem there. So we need a lot of money, but leave that alone. I think what we need to have this all done and to have this monitor and change from opportunity into an implementation, we need a kind of a permanent pivot, a watchtower, an observatory, but a very active one who can try to follow and steer what's happening, let's say, at national level, at European level, on the market, what the industry needs, and then constantly kind of monitors and points into the, hopefully at that moment, right directions. So we need the businesses for that, so the barging industry, and probably by extension the inland ports. We need the commercial parties offering solutions. We need authorities, the fairways and their IT projects, like Riscomex, you name it. We need the EU Commission, the member states and their potential support to build a strategic agenda, and that's their take, strategic agenda. That's for them to do. R&D programs, deployment programs, for sure. We are past the stage that for many things it still needs to be done at R&D level, and of course when needed we need policy. No, that's not my wife, Henk, it's my oldest daughter. And then to steal Julia, yep, and to steal something very commercial and abusing my own name.
Very good. Nik Delmeire, ladies and gentlemen. Nik, there's, although I have a big time constraint, There's still a question I want to ask you. At certain stage, you said we should not lose our identity. You remember? What did you mean with that?
Well, there are maybe applications that you can buy off the shelves, but that are more geared for road transport, so not really useful for inland navigation. So we have to make sure that these things fit with IWT. I see, for example, in the Federated and the Phoenix project, IWT is not really taken into account. We have to make sure that we find our way into this. So that's how we preserve identity.
Thanks for clarifying. And I know it's an Herculean task we have ahead of us, but I guess it's a really interesting one. Thank you again, Nik.